to work for this guy. And he goes out again about 9 o'clock in the morning. Apparently the harvest was bigger than he thought, so he gets some more workers. And then he goes out about noon and he finds some more. And then about 3 o'clock in the afternoon and he finds some more. And then he comes back at the 11th hour, which would have been about 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And it's pretty late in the day to be hanging around looking for work, but the vineyard owner goes out there and finds some people and says, "Why are you still standing around?" And you have to realize, of course, this is a parable about people entering God's kingdom. The vineyard owner goes, "Why are you guys still hanging around?" "Well, nobody's come to hire us." So he says, "All right, you guys, you go into the vineyard as well." The surprising part of the story, of course, is not that there's a vineyard owner going out and hiring people to work in his field. The surprising part of the story is that this guy gives the people that he hired at 5 o'clock the same wage as the people that he hired at 6 o'clock in the morning. Those that came to work late would be thinking, "Man, oh man, I'm doing pretty good here." Those that came to work early were thinking, "Man, I got ripped off." So there are two things that are operating here, these attitudes that are going on. A feeling of fairness and a feeling of superiority. These guys that came early said, "We agreed to pay a denarius and we have worked hard all day. It's only fair that if you're going to pay those guys a denarius, then you got to pay me one too. Or you got to pay me more than they get, because I've been working more than they." And they're feeling superior because they've been out in the scorching heat, "Oh, woe is me" type of thing. And we humans have this innate need for fairness. Like, if you get something and I'm better than you, I get more than you. That attitude goes back once again to the same attitude the rich young ruler had. I've got more money and good looks and power than you, so I'm better than you and deserve more than you. And it's that kind of attitude God is just puncturing. And he does it here with this story as well. The Lord basically says, "I give salvation to anyone that I choose to." Those that come to the game late don't get half a salvation. They get the whole thing. If salvation was based upon our obedience or the amount of time that we had been in God's kingdom, then people who had been there would earn more. They would be more saved somehow. And God says, no, it's all the same. And what I love about this story is what it reveals to us about the character of God. A couple of things that I notice here. Number one is that, God's always looking for people to come into his vineyard. In 2 Chronicles chapter 16, I love this verse. It says, "The eyes of the Lord run to and fro throughout the whole earth to show himself strong on behalf of those whose heart is loyal to him." The Lord is always wanting to bring people into his kingdom, which is amazing to me. I don't know if you ever really thought about that. Why would the King of the universe want to have us humans in his kingdom? Us frail, weak humans. It just doesn't make any sense to me. But he's always looking for people. And secondly, God is generous. And I think that's one of the big things that we see. We might say God is merciful. But here it talks about this characteristic of generosity. And we see that throughout the Scriptures. Just to mention a couple of verses to you. For instance, in James chapter 1, he says, "If you lack wisdom, ask God, who gives generously to all without reproach, and it will be given to him." Asking God for wisdom, he gives generously without saying, "What, you can't figure that out for yourself? What's wrong with you?" He doesn't do that. He doesn't reproach us. We ask him for wisdom. He says, "All right, cool. Here you go." 1 John chapter 5, verse 15 says, "We know if he hears us in whatever we ask, we know that we have the request that we have asked of him." And when you ask things for the glory of the Lord, he will give those things to you. And then I love Ephesians chapter 3, verse 20. To him who is able to do far more abundantly than all that we ask or think, according to the power at work within us. Now, the way that worldly power works is that I have it, you don't. I'm only going to give you enough that will keep you under my power. I'm going to keep you dependent on me. The Lord says, I'm going to give you abundantly above anything that you could ask or think, because He is a generous giver. The truth is, we don't get what we deserve. We get what we don't deserve. So, you'd think after this story, and after seeing the rich young ruler, and the response that he had, and Jesus speaking about how it's important, so vital, for things not to possess us, but for us to cling to Jesus, that they would get it. That the first will be last and the last first. Okay, yeah, I'm a little thick-headed, Lord, but I get it now. You'd think that would be the case, wouldn't you? But you would be wrong. Because what happens here now is what we're going to see. Jesus first gives them a glimpse of the walking the talk, and then a couple of the disciples and their moms sort of walk all over Jesus. Try to anyway. Okay, verse 17. As Jesus was going up to Jerusalem, he took the 12 disciples aside, and on the way he said to them, "See, we are going up to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man will be delivered over to the chief priests and scribes, and they will condemn him to death and deliver him over to the Gentiles to be mocked and flogged and crucified, and he will be raised on the third day." Now, you would think, well, okay then. Thank you for telling us that it's not going to be easy. We can tell it's going to be a bad thing, but we'll look for it. And when it happens, we'll go, this is awful, but it's going to be okay because Jesus said he was going to be raised from the dead on the third day. So all we have to do is count to 3. I think we can do that. So you read this, right? And then what happens after Jesus is arrested? They freak out. Peter decides that he's one of the 3 musketeers, whoosh, on God, and he takes this guy's ear off. I'm sure he was aiming for his head, but misses. And Jesus says, "Peter, I just want to let you know that swordsmanship is not one of your strengths. It's not your gift." And he puts Malchus's ear back on, and the disciples run. I think it's the Gospel of John that shares with us that one guy was so freaked out that he ended up running around without his clothes on. I mean, it was nuts, and they went wacky. And then when the crucifixion happened, they were just freaked out, and they hid themselves away out of fear. Well, I can actually kind of understand that, because it's one thing to know intellectually that something bad is going to happen. But when something bad actually does happen, our frontal lobes actually disengage, and we literally can't think straight, and we then go back to our default programming. Our default programming that says the Romans are more powerful than we are. Our leader has been arrested. Now he's being destroyed. He's being murdered. And this is it. And we're next. So run! But Jesus, again, is very merciful. But he also knows that when we get in times of crisis, we won't be able to think straight either. So he's there to comfort us and to say, it is really going to be okay. I will never leave you or forsake you. And I will bring you safely into my Father's kingdom. And there is nothing that can separate you from my love. Absolutely nothing. So after this, anyway, it's just kind of funny to me that this story happens right here. This account takes place. Because here Jesus is given this very clear indication of the character of the Father, that the power and position are not what it's about in God's kingdom. And then to show that this is the case, he says, I'm going to show you that to be first, you must be the servant of all. And to do that, I'm going to be your servant, and I'm going to die for you. And so then, they're walking along, And the mother, verse 20, the mother of the sons of Zebedee, Salome, she comes up to Jesus with her sons, And kneeling before him, she asked him for something. So it's this big dramatic scene, right? Mrs. Zebedee, I kind of picture as sort of the stereotypical Jewish